what language are you thinking of studying?
Was he into ASMR?
Yeah, very. He's the epitome of how to make a person feel comfortable, just so chill and laid back. And I said, well, I'm thinking about something easy. I'm busy. Just Mandarin. Because when you first learn Mandarin as an English speaker, you just hear a bunch of noise.
Yes.
Or when you learn any language, you hear a bunch of noise. And then you slowly start being like, this is a word, that's a word, this is a word. And then when you have things like cat, mao, it makes sense. Or you have words like nai lao, cheese, or bingan for cookie, or pop for soda, water.
Because for Asia, it's always been this and we go on WTO, so it's, wow, subtitles, this, yeah, right? Yeah. All the expressions. When you look at the Western aspect, this almost looks comical. And, at first I didn't quite appreciate it when I first came back to Taiwan, but I think over time I'm like, I think I understand the appeal. All right, welcome back to FUNDAY Chat, everyone. I'm your host, Wade, and today we have a very special guest. He's actually the second male that we have on the show. And so his name is Zach, Mandarin name, 左右. A very interesting nickname, which we can get into a little later.
Nickname, that's my official name on government documents.
Apologies, that's actually his official name. It sounds like a nickname, but official name, but let's get into that in a little bit. We have him on here because he's actually an actor. And Zach and I, 左右 and I, actually got connected through WTO. You kind of spouted out all the cities that you were filming at. So I'm going to just let you kind of say, because I don't remember half of them. Yeah, but sure. Can you tell us where?
So I've been working as an actor for almost 15 years. I've worked all over the place. Some of my favorite cities I've worked in have been Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Macau, Taipei, Kaohsiung. I've worked in Cairo. I've worked in Marseille, France. Worked in Omaha. I've worked in Memphis, Tennessee. I've worked all over.
All over the world.
Yeah.
All right.
That passport's busy.
It is busy, and we're going to get into this a little more too, but you are from a very small town, Nebraska. Yeah. That you said population under 200, around 200 people?
So, I grew up in two small towns. I went to school up until I was 14 in a tiny town in Nebraska called Nahaka, shout out. 187 people last time I checked.
Crazy.
And then I spent my summers in a tiny town called Trout, Louisiana, which is 20 people.
That's very hard to imagine. I've come from a very small town, but 20 is another level. Yeah. And also, we just mentioned that you are a multilingualist.
Yes,
speak multiple languages.
My mother would probably say that I'm such a yapper that one language wasn't big enough, so I had to learn a lot of others. I can do varying things in different ones. The ones I'm most comfortable in would be English and Mandarin. But then I can also, make jokes with my friends and order coffee and talk about the Electoral College in the United States, probably in French and Spanish and Arabic. I'm currently learning the Russian language, which is fun. And then I have a bit of a background in American Sign Language.
So that is Zach. Welcome, Zach, to FUNDAY Chat.
But I can't do math in any of them.
Okay. Well, so, that's quite an impressive resume of things that you've done and the languages that you speak.
It's impressive when you see it on paper. If you saw how the sausage is made, you would realize how much of a silly goose I am.
Well, I do know you a little bit, so...
Yeah.
But you know what? Just talking about the language aspect, could you maybe tell us, because we are based here in Asia, and you came to Asia in 2011, correct?
Yeah.
So sort of, how did you choose Asia, and how did you even learn the language? Because you do speak fluent Mandarin, because we spend time, filming again in WTO, but how did you learn that?
Well, I made a really silly joke, and then my professor and a whole lot of people who knew much better than me ran with it and encouraged it.
What was the joke?
Well, so I was studying to get a BFA in acting, and in order to get a BFA from my university, you have to do gen ed credits. So you have to do a course of math, a science, or whatever. And it came around to pick a language, and they were offering Mandarin for the first time.
Wow.
And I already had a background in Spanish and French. And my professor, he asked me, Dr. J. Scott Shipman, thank you. He asked me, so Zach, what language are you thinking of studying?
Was he into ASMR?
Yeah, very. He's the epitome of how to make a person feel comfortable, just so chill and
very nice.
And I said, well, I'm thinking about something easy. I'm busy. I'm just Mandarin. because
joking.
Because haha, we know
It's one of the hardest
languages in the world, right? Yeah. And then he says, "Oh, Zach, I think that's wonderful. I think that's so amazing." And then he's a person that when he gets excited about something, he can make anyone excited. Wow. And he's like talking me into it. And he's like, "You should do this. This is amazing. Like the largest growing economies in the world, they speak Mandarin, like a lot of film, a lot of really great art." Like, and then he started talking about like ancient theater during the Yuan dynasty under the rule of Genghis Khan. And I'm like, write that down, everybody. And I ended up writing a paper on that later when I went to Beijing and came back. That's a different story. Crazy. So I got so excited. And then as like kind of a bit, I started learning Mandarin. Wow. And then a year later, my course like load comes out and it says like Mandarin. And I'm like, whose idea was this?
Yeah.
And then, so I studied it. Surprise, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I was on a scholarship and I didn't want to lose my scholarship funding. And then there were other professors auditing the class, like the head of the poli-sci department, the head of the Japanese department, I think the head of the German department was in there, and it's like 6 kids and then like 3 professors. Wow. And all of them were saying like, "Oh, Zach's gonna learn Mandarin." And meanwhile, I'm working so hard. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm getting like B's and C's in class, but everyone's saying that I'm doing the best, including the teacher. And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, because you're the only one who can like actually speak with me." And I'm like, "Well, everyone else is getting A's." And then I'm asking them like how because they're asking me how I'm speaking, and I'm asking, "How are you passing?" Yeah. And then I'm like, "Well, how many hours could you possibly be studying?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know, like 2 or 3." And I'm like, "Oh, per night." And they're like, "Oh, no, like per week." And I'm like, "What?" Meanwhile, I'm studying 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Because I love it.
Dedicated.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't want to fail, and also it's really fun for me.
Right.
What worked really well for me is what helped with speaking is I had a background in American Sign Language, which originally comes from Native American hand talk. Okay. And the whole point of hand talk is when I speak, do you understand me? When you speak, do you understand me? Yes. So you have tribes of over 1,000 different people, the Plains Native American people. They have to communicate like back and forth, but they don't have like a verbal language. Right. And they communicate across long distances. Wow. So you have to have something that works with trade. And the easiest way to do that is like, for example, we're going to get a little like potty humor. A little lesson. Okay. So this is how you say poop.
I think I know this one.
Because I taught you on WTO.
Well, okay, you did. Yes, you did. But isn't it also in the movie?
Yeah, it's used all the time.
Yeah.
And we also use it for like kids because you can learn this when you're 2 years old. Yes. And so like poop is like this, and then diarrhea is like this, and then constipation is like, and you got to make the face. Really? Yeah.
Yes, they do facial expression also being part of it, right?
Of course. Yeah, and like what's really great about it is there's not a huge set grammar structure. So it's like you have to grab like the backbone of the sentence.
Yes, and then try to formulate. Wow.
And because the way that I learn is I attach like physical gestures to a language. Because when you first learn Mandarin as an English speaker, you just hear a bunch of like noise. Yes. Or when you learn any language, you hear a bunch of noise. Yeah. And then you slowly start like being like, this is a word, that's a word, this is a word. And then when you have things like cat, mao, like it makes sense. Or you have words like nai lao, cheese, or like bingan for cookie, or pop for soda, like water. Yeah. And then it's like very visual and also beautiful words like galaxy, or like handsome, or like beautiful, or like gorgeous, or more, please. And since there's no structure, I was able to use STPVO for the Mandarin structure, subject, noun, place, verb, object. Okay. And then I could fit that in, and then I was just cooking with gas, baby.
Wow. There's so many different ways to learn a language, and particularly like a hard language like Mandarin. But it's such a fascinating way that you've made this association with, sign language. I don't think I've ever heard anyone kind of share it that way.
It worked for me, and I've helped other people learn it. And then the biggest thing that really upped my Mandarin game was like I went and I studied abroad in Beijing for like 6 months, got a scholarship.
Being in the environment for sure.
But then I couldn't afford to continue classes when I went back to the United States because like college in the US is very expensive. Yes. So I started working at Chinese restaurants. Ah, smart. And they
very quickly
they don't care how blonde and curly your hair is. They don't care how green your eyes are. They don't care how lily white you are when you walk in that restaurant. If you can't communicate with the
Yeah,
chefs.
yeah.
And so I was like in the kitchen, and then we had like a whole bunch of people. We had people from like Guangdong,
Yeah.
and then we also had people from like from Mexico and Panama.
Wow.
And so then like at one point I had a moment where a manager was like, "Oh, go and tell so and so to do this," and I'm like, "I don't speak Spanish." And then he said like, "Oh, well, you speak Mandarin, so figure it out." And I'm like, "What?" And what's frustrating is I did figure it out, and so I guess he was right in a weird way, but he was
Gotcha.
wrong in the in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
good
yeah,
way.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
go work at your local Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, if you want to learn Mandarin, right?
And a lot of swear words.
You learn the restaurant lingo.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned obviously in college as well that you were studying some acting jobs.
Yeah.
So I was curious, was this acting career path, was it kind of like formed when you were a kid? Like, were you like, hey, I always want to be an actor?
It's a great question. You know, again, as like a silly little bit, I ended up like doing like a theater class in 8th grade, and then I like really liked it. But for a while, I thought I was going to do the military because that's what the rest of my family did. Yeah, that's the face my parents.
Interesting.
That's the face my parents made when I said that too.
Okay,
They're like,
okay.
okay.
Like you? 左右.
With your ADHD and your inability to listen to authority, yeah, that's going to work out great for you. But I really loved it because acting is this thing of like, one, it's constant make believe and pretend, and that's what like kids want to do.
Yeah.
And then also you don't have to choose one career because you have the fun joke of like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
Yes, yes.
And the earliest time that I can think of like knowing what an actor was surprise. I was running late, and I was 6 years old, and I was on my way to like class or something, and my dad was just so frustrated because he couldn't get me like out the door.
Okay.
And I was obsessed with the Power Rangers, and I'm like, oh, Dad, like I need to.
I need to transform.
They're on TV.
Oh.
And because we lived in such a small village, like outside of a small village,
gotta
everything
travel.
that happened on TV was real.
Because
Because the news happened on TV.
Yes.
And so I thought that the Power
Your head.
Rangers were the news. You know,
Yeah.
I need to find out how they're like,
how are they transforming like that?
how Rita Repulsa, like what is she doing to our community, and how is like Kim and the Yellow Red, like how is everybody like helping,
Yeah.
you know, the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
And my dad's so frustrated, and he was like, oh, well, the Power Rangers aren't even real, like, and I'm like,
Wait, Santa's not real?
wait, stop.
Wait,
stop.
what? The Easter Bunny?
Santa's real. Everybody knows.
Oh
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, sorry. I don't know what I'm saying.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Disrespectful.
My
I'm
bad.
writing
We'll
down.
cut
We're
that
gonna
out.
Talk about that on the PTO. Yeah. No, leave that in. I'm like, wait, hold the phone.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And he's like,
Wow.
well, they're actors. And I'm like, well, what's an actor?
Mm.
And then he's like, oh, well, they're like playing a role. And then
Wow.
me and my constant like, well, you know, you make like, I'm going to one up you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, because I wanted to be a Power Ranger one day. And I'm like, Dad, I'm going to be a Power Ranger. I need to learn. I need to watch the news.
Of course.
And he's like, they're actors. And I'm like, well, if I can't be a Power Ranger, then I'm going to be an actor, before I knew what acting was.
Wow. That's the origin story, huh?
Apparently.
That is pretty crazy. So, I mean, when we started off this talk, we, spouted all these places that you filmed, but can you maybe tell us some of the things you've actually, like projects you've worked on and films you've done?
Yeah, sure. So some stuff that the audience at home might be familiar with is I was in a show in a movie called Weekend in Taipei, now available on
Yes.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I was also in Dead Talent Society, available on Netflix. And then, of course, WTO,
Yes.
streaming on YouTube. But some other projects I've done is Gui Chui Deng, Zhi Long Li Mi Ku, Candle in the Tomb, The Ghost Blows Out the Light.
Nice.
Find that online. Also, I did Madhouse, Feng and Yuan, which I like really loved.
Okay.
And another fun one that I personally am like very proud of and happy with is I did a short film called Lost, which was a student-directed project, even though I was a professional actor at the time,
Wow.
grown-up actor.
Yeah.
And it went all the way to Cannes.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first time at Cannes.
Very
and,
cool.
It
Just
was
for the people at home, what is Cannes?
Oh, Cannes International Film Festival is a very prestigious film festival that happens in a city called Cannes, France.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they do like short films, and Jeff, they do like feature films as well. They do a bunch of cool stuff, and everyone gets like dressed up, and they get super fancy, and then they get drunk on wine. And go
Gotcha.
there. But the reason I love it is because we filmed in Inner Mongolia. The other actors I was working with, they spoke Mongolian.
Wow.
I had to learn a little Mongolian to do it. Don't know
Yeah.
if it's good.
Yeah.
And some gorgeous shots. But what was
Oh, I'd imagine.
so fun too is like the director, it was his like master's thesis.
Wow.
And then the camera crew, like everyone was college students. And they got
Yeah.
this like beautiful piece of art.
Yeah.
And it was like really fun to be a part of that.
You know, like it blows my mind the amount of work that goes in to actually, because I mean, everyone watches the final product and you're like, yeah, well, obviously it's supposed to be this good. It's supposed to be, you know, up to par, and it's supposed to, and you don't recognize the amount of work and people that goes into all the BTS, right? So I mean, I'm sure you know all the insights, but once I've kind of got to peek a little bit at the, you know, behind the curtain, it's mind blowing. Like the intricate details to how people have to organize, how you think one shot, you're like, oh, just click roll, right?
Yeah.
No, figure out lighting, figure out sound, figure out this person's dynamic. Was that the right shot? Was that, there's just so much to it. So honestly, respect to you guys.
Well, and what I really love about it is like, or when we talk about like the work, like actors are so centered in the conversation, and so we're like directors as well.
Yes.
And part of that's like a little bit on purpose because like it's more of like the white
draw.
collar. Well, it's the white collar draw of like the industry,
Yes,
and that
yes.
was on purpose when the Oscars were created.
Gotcha.
Because like originally it was like they wanted to separate white collar workers from blue collar workers, and so that's why the first awards were like for actors and directors and the people in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And then later through advocacy, like once actors were like platformed enough, then we wanted to advocate for our friends who are like in makeup and costumes and
Production
lighting
side.
and sound and editing, because it's
it makes the entire thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like the amount of work that happens on set that doesn't even hit the camera is wild. Like my favorite thing is going on a set and like being able to explore what we call meishuzu, so the art deck, the art department.
Yes.
Because you can open up those cabinets, like in any scene, like pick a random movie, open up a cabinet, and if you pull out like actual folders and you flip through them, and it's like detailed history of the whole thing. So as an actor, I go through and people are always like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm seeing the art my friend made that isn't going to make it on camera.
Right. Wow.
Like in Red Envelope, the short film that I'm taking to Amsterdam soon, in the red envelope that we didn't even open and get on camera, my buddy Chris, he was like, did you look inside it? And I'm like, no, is there something inside of it? Because I was worried of pulling the wrong thing out. And he's like, man, nobody looked. And then I opened it, and there was like a lock of hair, and then like a bit of money, and like a check, and like this proper red envelope.
Right,
so beautiful and handwritten with calligraphy.
Yeah.
And then, you know, me...
Doesn't always get appreciated, huh?
Yeah, because I was focusing too much and trying to be pretty on camera.
Well, so tell me, when it comes to the acting part, I'm sure lots of people might be curious. Like, do you think it's more nature, like you're born with this, or do you think it's something that you kind of have to work on? And I'm sure it's a bit of both, but what do you think matters more, the nature or nurture?
You know, I think that with this art, education, all forms of learning, I think it's a combination of nature and nurture. Yeah. So the nature is I have the inherent like yap factor and the need and the want and the drive to tell stories based on how I grew up, and the overall sense of childlike play that I just couldn't beat out of my system. But if I didn't have the nurture aspect, if like my mom didn't move me out of a very small educational system to a larger educational system to attend high school, if I didn't go to a really good university through scholarships, if I didn't have a professor who like very specifically made sure that I learned certain things, then I wouldn't have all the tools in my toolbox to be able to do the work that I do now. And as an actor, I also have the responsibility to use my tools to help nurture the talent that exists in like younger artists today. Because there's so much gatekeeping. There's too much gatekeeping, not just in our industry, but all over, but specifically in our industry. Like people won't, like, it's like they climb a ladder and they get to a certain point and then they pull the ladder up from behind them. And it's an absolute tragedy and travesty to the art that we have around us. Because like, I'm lucky I didn't grow up with a ton of money or anything, but a lot of people around me were like, okay, I don't know what he's going to do, put him here, you know? And then, especially in our industry, we have a lot of people who have gone to like Juilliard or Harvard or Yale, and they're able to do that because they are incredibly talented, and I will not harsh on that whatsoever. But they're able to do that because their family has a lot of wealth.
Things have been set up for them in a way.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like, and Lupita Nyong'o is one of my favorite actresses of all time, and she's very upfront with this. Like,
Yes.
she's from a family of diplomats. She speaks multiple languages, and she got into Juilliard.
Yeah.
But then in her Oscar speech, when she won Best Supporting Actor for 12 Years a Slave, she said that there are many. I can't remember her character's name. Patsy, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
She said there's many of this woman around the world.
Yes.
And it's not lost on me that I won this award for portraying this character, but had she had the same resources and access, she would have had a different story to tell.
Yeah. The classic Spider-Man line, with great power
Comes great
responsibility. You know, it's
Or
kind of.
like-
Can you tell me what is the biggest difference you feel when it comes to it being in Asia, like working in the Asia industry versus, and you have done some, you know, Western or maybe even European production and worked with, you know, those industries, but what's the biggest difference you think is the West and Asian industry when it comes to acting?
That's a really great question, Wade. If only I had gotten this question beforehand and could have prepared a good answer. No, I'm kidding. He gave me all the resources. Honestly, I have a hard time with that one because I've done so much work out here, and also every production is incredibly different. I will say that, like, as an American, we're like really big on like yapping and like small talk. And so we'll talk about like a million things on set until we get to the actual work.
Film and shoot, yeah.
And out here in Asia, it's very much like, okay, we're all here to like specifically like work.
I see, yeah.
But that's also like kind of like an age gap thing.
Okay,
So what I really love is like when I get the chance to work with a lot of like older actors here.
Okay.
So I've worked with like Dai Li Ren. I've worked with Chen Shufang, Shufang Ayi, Shufang Ama for me and me alone. And I've also worked with like Eddie Ko, Gao Xiong Lao Shi. And what's really great with them is like it's a job.
Okay.
It's absolutely a job. Like it's so much art and we have so much fun and we play with it on set. But it's a lot of like, all right, I have dinner with my friend at 8 o'clock. So if we could wrap this up at 7, that's wonderful. Or they'll kind of come up and they'll be like, hey, Zach, you're doing great.
Yeah.
I have dinner at 7. Can we just do this a little bit quicker? Or just like a little bit like, hey, do that line again. You know? And like it speeds up. So that's a lot more fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I personally, when I've moved back to Taiwan a couple years back, I think just in terms of the social media aspect, I've just recognized there's such a big difference in how we kind of approach what we, like the consumer's aspect. Because for Asia, it's always been this very, and we go on WTO, so it's, wow, subtitles, this, right? Yeah. All the expressions. Whereas,
can we get that in editing, please? And like bells and whistles?
so like when you look at the Western aspect, this almost looks comical. Yeah. And, you know, at first I didn't quite appreciate it when I first came back to Taiwan, but I think over time I'm like, I think I understand the appeal. Now, it doesn't necessarily, like, it's not necessarily for my tasting, but I feel like as long as the people that you're communicating with, they sort of like get the emotion you're trying to invoke, which, you know, maybe in the Western, I prefer like a cleaner look. And I think everyone has their preference, but it's just, that's the biggest difference I've sort of noticed, you know?
So the United States is very, or like in the West, it's very like, we lead the horse to water and then you drink. Like we don't over explain the joke.
Sure.
And that's to do a little bit with our sarcasm. It's a little bit to do with like subtlety works a bit better.
Yeah.
And then in Asia, it's a lot of like, you spell it out completely. And
that's a good way to put it, yeah.
You have to say the quiet part out loud.
Yes.
And if you don't, or you play with too much with sarcasm, it's like, the person that you're joking with, they don't want to feel like you're making the joke about them or you're not including them in on the joke. The bigger difference, and there's no right or no wrong, it's just like a difference of, it goes back to
somewhat cultural.
Yeah, well, the West, we're much more like me-centered culture, and then Asia's much more we-centered culture.
Yep.
And part of like the big bells and whistles is, I heard this explained once to me by a producer, not WTO, this was years and years ago, where they said that the reason the big bells and whistles happen is because they assume that the audience is watching their phone at home. Yeah. And so they're watching their phone and then the television's going on in the background. So they need everything to be at like a 9 or a 10. Yeah. And then pump it up to a 12 when you look at the television. Right. Which for me, I find is like a disservice to the audience because we're assuming what they're doing. But in reality, like we don't actually know what's going on in their house. Right.
Essentially, there is a lot of experience here. And no doubt it didn't come without failure. And I think that's one thing, personally, it's always a struggle to really say, hey, let me just try and genuinely, even if it fails, it's okay. We almost always want to come up with, how do I set myself up to never fail so it just works out the first time? That rarely ever happens. Edison had to take 1,000 tries to get the light bulb to work, and most of us give up way before that. So, what has been your experience when it comes to the acting of having to do certain projects, work with certain people, and or maybe even going for castings and not getting the role? And then how
can't relate to that.
And how do you overcome that? Because
man, big question. There's this really great quote that says, the bird is not fearful that the branch will break because she trusts her own wings to fly. And that's something that I think quite a lot about, because I think when we're starting out, specifically as like artists, but as young people in general, we hear a lot from people that we trust, from educators, from friends and family, everyone who has the absolute best intentions to fill your brain with all the knowledge so that you don't get hurt in the same way that they do. And it's very lovely. It's very great. I think as that happens, we try and do everything that these people who are telling us to do, but in reality, they're not at the place that we actually want to wind up at.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I love my
everyone's
educators,
journey is different.
for sure.
Yeah.
And they're from Nebraska. They've never been to Asia, and so like, how would they know how entertainment works out here?
Yeah.
And they supplied me with so many tools. Where I was able to, and this was the lesson they were trying to teach me. Like, we don't know the answer. Here's a bunch of tools. Open up your toolbox. Apply. If you need a screwdriver, here's a screwdriver. If you needed a hammer, here's a hammer. But like, sometimes you're going to need a converter, and we don't know kilometers. And so I think that we need to be good at trusting ourselves and trusting our own instincts, and realizing that even if we do fail and we fail big, it's going to be a massive lesson. So for me, when I approach a really, really big decision, and I know it in my heart, I know it in my soul, whether it comes to like love or finances or career or travel or, picking the right bed sheet from IKEA, I look at it and I say, when I am 810 years old and I am on my deathbed and I'm surrounded by fluffy pillows and beautiful flowers, and I'm about to like pass on to the great beyond, I don't want to have a single moment where I look back and I say, man, what if I did that? Like, oh God, I wish I did that. And I don't want that. And I've had like many moments where like I did something and I'm like, bad choice, brother. But at least I know that I look back that like I tried. And I also force myself and allow myself to be kind to that young version of Zoyo, that young version of Zach, to say like, my goodness, you took a risk and it was calculated, but my brother, you are bad at math. But how brave was that young person?
Dude, that's well said. Because
does that answer your question?
That
I
actually,
forgot what you asked.
No, that does. That does. And I really appreciate just being reminded of this, because I think that's always, all of us will encounter this, and it's in all areas of life, not just even in the acting. It's like you said, it could be the smallest of things, but if we don't make a decision, if we just rather sit back and let things happen, then typically we can't, I think we will one day be on our deathbeds and regret, what if? And I think that's one of the biggest questions. We want to live in a way that we don't question the what ifs. We can look back, even if it wasn't good, it led me to where I am now. So thank you for sharing that.
My buddy's therapist said, things don't happen to you. Sometimes they happen for you.
Yes.
Like that.
Very well
I did
said.
want to say just a little bit of advice to the audience. And we can cut it out.
No,
if
that's
we
good.
want.
No, that's good. That's good.
Absolutely trust your instincts. Listen to the advice around you, but as you go through, try and lead with your kindest foot forward. Take your calculated risks. I would not be where I am if I did not have community to like fall back on, to reach out to, but also ultimately trusting your own instincts, because you know what goal you are trying to reach, and you can look at all of the resources you had and make that educated decision and go forward. Because a lot of like the big successes that, like a lot of the major successes I've had in my life, came with a lot of people telling me how bad of an idea it was.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people telling me learning Mandarin was a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, look at you now.
I make money from it.
No.
Sometimes I do.
No, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And of course, I think,
Thanks for asking.
again, we honestly could have talked a lot more into this topic, but maybe just for the closing off here, can you maybe just share some of the things that you're working on or looking forward to work on, and just give us a little plug. Yes, the plug. Get into those notes.
Right. If you want to go ahead and follow me and see what I'm up to, go ahead and go to z.ireland at instagram.com. If you want to find out the best way to support me, money. Money. Lots of money. Big, giant bags of money. Give me. Money.
We can all use a little more money.
No, my serious answer to that is like, if you want to support me, if you are a resident of the United States or if you have citizenship to the United States, call your representative and tell them that we need to continue funding for PBS and NPR because Sesame Street has been running for 55 years. Okay. And all of a sudden, some guy gets into office and he decides that he wants to interrupt Elmo and Big Bird's job security.
Wow.
He's trying to defund him and completely like rip this apart. And I have so many cool projects that rely on public funding that we want to, like, I have this wonderful cooking travel show that we are trying so hard to get on some sort of access channel because we believe it's a public service.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to do it, and they say it's a beautiful project and it's something that the world needs. It's a cooking show.
Yeah.
You can definitely be involved in it because you would fit it really, really, really well.
All right.
And we want to do a season in South Africa. But we can't do it right now because there's not enough money.
So we do need the money.
I'm doing okay. I have job security. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
But I need to make sure that my friends get paid.
This project.
And this can also get out because they're doing so much work and they need to make the money. I'm allowed to do passion projects. Smaller ways, if you want to support me, please reach out on like Instagram. I think I have my business email. There's a way to get in contact with me. If you have a fun project, like shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. I'm more than happy to definitely take a look at it. I'm probably going to say yes. Don't worry too much about budget. If people are getting paid, we'll figure something out. But if people aren't getting paid, if we don't have the resources for that, I love to show up on like a random YouTube, like a random TV show, just somewhere
collab
that like
with someone.
It goes out in the world, and then a friend of mine like sees it, takes a photo, and sends it to me like 3 years later. I love sneaky little gifts out there.
Yeah, that's cool.
So please reach out.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing this aspect, the acting side. And again, this is not the only episode. This is the first half, and we're actually going to go on to the next episode, which will happen after this.
I forgot. I'm getting a note from my manager. I actually do have two very specific things I need to plug. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, everybody. All right. Red Envelope, a short film that stars me, Zach Ireland, directed by Tammy Hsu, written by Hugo Chun, and also starring Chen Shufang Ai, is going to the Amsterdam International Queer Film Festival. The International Queer Migrant Film Festival, May 8th to the 11th, and it's going to have its European premiere. Eventually, we're going to have a Taiwanese premiere, and if you're out here, please go ahead and watch that. And also, Wheel Around the World with Shane, a wonderful YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. It goes all over the world, and I was very lucky to be a member on one of his episodes, and we went all around Taiwan. I think we're going to talk about that in the next episode.
Very cool. So with that said, this is the first episode covering the acting portion of things. The next episode, we are going to talk more from the perspective of a tourist, foreigner, now kind of local, been around in Asia.
He doesn't want to say it. White guy.
Well, he said it. We'll be talking to the white guy this next episode.
They're going to cancel you. Wait.
Oh man, don't cancel me. But thank you for chatting with us, and we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.